A wrecking ball on 2024 NFL Draft Week. I'm not going to lie, Ant. I feel broken. I feel wrecked. All the rumors continuing to swirl. I feel confused. And that confusion is exactly where we're going to start the show today. It is Draft Week. We're headed to Detroit for the show on Thursday. Our final mock draft on the show will be Wednesday. We have Dan Orlovsky talking about the draft coming up at 6 p.m. JP Finley's going to check in one of the next 2 days. Working on a bunch of other stuff. Like, simply put, it's almost here. And with the Commanders holding such a critical pick in the 2024 draft, you would think that we'd have a clue. And if you thought that, you would be wrong. We have what feels like a million clues, and none of them seem to add up to lead anywhere. And it is to spend time reading about the draft right now or listening to podcasts, and I'm not talking about like random people, right? I'm talking about people who know stuff, people that have sources in the league, people that watch tape, people that do these evaluations, and that typically are very reliable for good sources of where to go to create understanding. If you listen to them right now, you are 100% confident that the Commanders are taking Jayden Daniels until you listen to the next guy who's 100% confident that they are taking Drake May. Until you listen to the next guy that says, actually, J.J. McCarthy is above Drake May on the Commanders' board and is still very much in the mix to potentially pass Jayden Daniels and be the pick on Thursday. I have absolutely zero idea what's going to happen Thursday. If I had to predict right now and I had to place money, it would be where the odds aren't going to get me very much return. That is going to be with Jayden Daniels. It's probably the pick. The entire NFL seems to think that is who it is. And you've got people like Daniel Jeremiah going on McAfee's show today saying, yep, I have to just, eventually you hear it from enough places that I have to take my personal bias out of it. I have to take my own personal opinion out, both in what he thinks of Drake May as a player and how he thinks Drake May fits with the Commanders, and just go, everyone says it's Daniels, so I guess it must be Daniels. I look up right now on NFL Live where I see Adam Schefter talking. I would love to know, and if you want to pop on the sound of Schefter and monitor what he's saying in case he says anything crazy. But they immediately go to Jayden Daniels highlights as I watch NFL Live right now. Again, Orlovsky going to call in as soon as he gets done with NFL Live coming up at 6 o'clock today. Then on Kevin Sheehan's podcast today, that came out this morning, the Sheehan Show podcast, John Kimes was the guest, who I trust more than anyone on anything Commanders specific, and he had this to say about kind of where they are right now.
If I were to tell you that Jayden Daniels wasn't the pick, but they picked a quarterback at number 2, based on the last minute you mentioning J.J. McCarthy more than Drake May, is it fair to say that John Kimes would predict or would guess the best chances would be J.J. McCarthy at 2 over Drake May?
Probably. I don't, and that's probably.
Okay.
Yeah. How's that?
Perfect.
Like, the hard part is, unless you hear it from a high thing, like, it's really hard to know. So, like, you can start to overthink some things, and you start to piece some things together, and it's like this. If the order was that, it would not surprise me at all.
Okay, then. John Kimes, it would not surprise me at all. Could mean just that at face value, and I hate doing this to John. So, John, if you're listening, I'm sorry that I'm parsing your words like this. But it could mean he really doesn't. It wouldn't surprise him. It could mean he knows something. It could be just a best guess based off what he knows about other things of the way they think. It's wild. And the thing is, Like, Daniel Jeremiah knows Adam Peters very, very well. They've known each other for a long time. And for DJ to go on McAfee's show and be like, everyone says it's Jayden Daniels, but, like, that's not what I would guess for them. Like, I just don't think anybody knows. And the problem with that is there are a lot of people who get paid to know. And unless Adam Peters is the one that tells you, you don't know. And that is just the reality of where we are right now with this quarterback situation. Is there is not a single person outside of Adam Peters. And I don't even know that, like, of course they have conversations. There's Lance Newmark probably has a pretty good idea. Dan Quinn probably has a good idea. Josh Harris probably has a pretty good idea. So there are certainly people that know more than the rest of us. But none of those people are talking. None of those people are giving intel. None of those people are giving information. And ultimately, Adam Peters, in year one, making this incredibly important pick, has probably kept this really close to the vest. And again, it's also a close decision. And so what I do think is interesting, and where I kind of want to take this conversation, besides a circular, I don't know, which is all we've done so far, is there does seem to be a disconnect. And this is what I want to talk about with Orlovsky coming up at 6. And there does seem to be a disconnect between the NFL and, like, the people who study it, right? So I was reading my guy Ben Solak earlier. He did his mock draft for The Ringer. He does one and one only mock draft every year. Ben's really smart. Ben studies it at a level that most people don't. Ben did really, and actually want to have him on the show this week and see if we can schedule it to talk about it. He does this really intense charting of quarterbacks, which is really illuminating. For instance, everyone thinks Michael Penix is very accurate. Solak's like, well, when you actually chart it, he's one of the least accurate guys that I've done the last 5 years. Like, yeah, his completion percentage is high, but when you look at, like, ball placement, his receivers bail him out a lot. And that's part of the reason that Penix is farther down on a lot of NFL boards. You got other people being like, he should be a top 5 pick. And it's like, nah, the old dude with bad knees and an accuracy problem isn't exactly the ideal prospect. And Solak literally typed out in his mock draft, Daniels to DC never passed the smell test for me. Everything that NFL teams look for in a quarterback is who Drake May is. And I see other people, like, good points. You know, hey, Drake May or Jayden Daniels is the guy to best start a game tomorrow. And it's like, why are you caring about starting a game tomorrow? I want to know who's going to help you win a championship. And it just seems like from a lot of people, some of whom used to be in the league. It's not like all media types that, like Drake May, are people that have no NFL experience or a bunch of nerds who just read and study and then try to, talk to NFL people at the combine at a bar at 2 a.m. No, these are like Nate Tice coached in the league. His dad obviously was an NFL head coach for a long, long time. Like, you got people that are former scouts and former coaches that really like Drake May. And I can't figure out why there are so many of those guys who like May, and then seemingly anyone who has any thing to do with the NFL more concretely, longer stints of people who were in the league and are now in the media, your Louis Riddick's, your Mark Rosses, etc., or people with sources that are talking to other people around the league, like Todd McShay. McShay said on Pardon My Take the other day, he has not talked to a single person in the league who has May higher than Daniels. I find that preposterous. I don't understand that. So it's something that, not that I don't understand that it's possible, obviously I could see why you have Jayden above Drake. I don't understand how it's that concrete amongst everyone that Todd McShay talks to. That seems crazy to me. And so I don't even know if I have a point here. I don't know if I've somehow, Anthony, have I talked for 12 minutes and said anything? I feel like there's been some information relayed.
Yeah.
I've laid out the conundrum that we're in. I don't know that I'm any closer to solving it. I think we just need to bring back football therapy.
That would be good.
Let's see if we can talk it out. Let's see if we can spend the next 15 to 30 minutes just talking it out. Commanders fans to Commanders host to Commanders producer over there, Ant, and his side of the glass. We're just bunch of dudes and ladies talking ball, trying to figure out if we can figure out this whole quarterback thing. No one else seems to have it figured out, but let's give it a shot. 301-230-0980. We'll talk about it with Dan Orlovsky at 6 o'clock. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and we're always live on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. The 2024 NFL Draft is Thursday, and you can hear every Commanders pick live here on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app. We, of course, will be in Detroit for the first round. Make sure that you're subscribed to the Team 980 on Instagram as well. Be posting some behind-the-scenes content, doing some vlogging, etc. Yeah, we're vlogging, Ant. What you got on that?
I have nothing.
Okay, that's fine.
jealous.
You don't have to do it. You get to consume
I'm
it.
jealous.
Why are you jealous?
Because you guys are going to be out there having a lot of fun.
It's really just me. I mean, B. Mitch is going to be out there, too.
Yeah.
I don't think
But I'll
B.
be
Mitch
in
is
here.
going to be doing
I'm going
the
to be vlogging from the studio.
We can get some Ant behind-the-scenes footage in the vlog. This is Craig on a screen in Detroit.
Yeah.
Woo! Anyway, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. There's just so much noise. There's so much stuff out there right now, and there just seems to be a disconnect with people who are so sure that one of three people is the pick at number 2. Really, it's that the sureness comes from one of two people, May and Daniels, and then there's, I think, a large group of people, and I will say this is a large group of us because I am in this group, who look at it and be like, I kind of think JJ is the right pick, but you're scared because he makes the least sense on paper. You look at Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy with the most there's two tiers, right, of things that you're looking at. You want production and potential. And on the max end of one is Jayden Daniels. He's got production. Heisman Trophy winner, 40 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions, ran for 3,000 yards in his career. Dude's got production out the wazoo. On the other side, you got potential, and Drake May is a built in a lab, 6'4", 225 pound, really strong arm, runs a 4.5, son of a coach, still kind of raw, is a prospect, but already really good. You got that, and then I'm I don't know, in the middle somewhere, there's that McCarthy fella who's really young and has got a really good arm and runs pretty well. He's not quite as big, doesn't have nearly as much production, but they also played in a offense where he didn't have to. So maybe that's the guy. I don't know, Ant.
I mean, I think the disconnect amongst media members is more so based on what your preference is, to be honest. So, Drake May, he's been drawing a lot of parallels to Josh Allen. Jayden Daniels has been drawing parallels to Lamar Jackson with, better
both of
arm
which are incorrect parallels, by the way. maybe they're
in terms of potential.
They're certainly not parallel lines. I'll put it that way.
Well, not parallel comparisons, I guess.
No, I know they're drawing parallels. It's funny because we do that, and then it's is Caleb Williams Patrick Mahomes or is he Kyler Murray? Because some of the attributes that people describe about him could be used to describe about either guy.
Yeah.
Is Jayden Daniels, is he Robert or is he Lamar or is he Daniel Jones?
I think it's more so at their peak. These are the best quarterbacks in our game right now. So I think that's more so what they're
for sure. And that's the thing is people are oh, they always give the best version, and it's well, what if he's not the best version?
Yeah.
What does he wind up as? What's his floor?
Yeah.
It's pretty important. And also people they're talking about one part Jayden Daniels to RG3 is a good comparison if you want body type and body type only. They're completely different players. Robert was an elite straight arm. Here's the difference, right? Robert was an elite straight line runner, truly elite, Olympic caliber sprinter. Jayden Daniels is not that, although he's really fast. Really fast. But if you line up Lamar, Robert, and Jayden Daniels to run 100, Robert beats both of them. If you now make it an S run where you have to swivel around some cones, Lamar's your guy. Right? Jayden's somewhere in the middle. Robert's oh, God, got to turn. That wasn't his thing. He was a straight line guy. Robert had a cannon for an arm. Robert, you ever seen Santana's finger that's jacked up?
Nah.
Oh, he's got a jacked up finger. It's Robert's fault.
Ooh.
Yeah. Robert had a cannon. Jayden doesn't. Jayden's got a good arm and throws with a quick release and great anticipation, but the power, the pop is not what Robert was. But yeah, they're both skinny and kind of tall. And so that's what people do. All right, now we got a bunch of phone calls. 301-230-0980, 617-360-0980. Again, don't forget Dan Orlovsky joining us at 6 o'clock. Tell your friends, be here, 6 p.m. If you can't be, Hoffman Show podcast or on demand on YouTube. Let's go to Kurt in District Heights. Kurt, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show. Get us started.
Hey, how you doing, Craig?
I'm good, bro.
I think you said it best, man. And just ignore the noise, and just me personally, I'm gonna go with my original thought, which was Jayden Daniels. The more I think about these other quarterbacks, the more intrigued I get, and then it starts kind of wearing on me a little bit. So I'm like, I'm tired of the back and forth and the wondering and all that. I'm just saying, ignore all the noise and stick with the original plan for me, okay, which would be Jayden Daniels. Now, of course, I'm going to go with, whatever Adam Peters goes with.
Right. When we say, it's our original choice, what does that matter? We're not making the pick,
Exactly. But one thing I want to say about Robert Griffin, though, exactly what you said, except another thing about Robert is that he did not have peripheral vision. He was a straight line runner without peripheral vision. That's why he ran into so many brick walls. At least Jayden Daniel does have a little wiggle in his run game, and he can see, he has that peripheral vision. He
Totally.
can see what's around him.
Totally.
Yeah,
Jayden is a better runner than Robert. Not a better sprinter, but as a football player,
Right.
which is the thing that they're getting hired for here, he is
Right.
definitely a better runner. It's a great point.
Another comparison real quick. I think with Drake May, I would compare him more with Justin Herbert. I don't think he's going to ever be as big and strong as Josh Allen.
Well, for sure, and he's not as big as Herbert either. Like Herbert's 6'6", 230. Like Drake is 6'4", 225. Carl, we got a bunch of calls, but appreciate yours as always. But then the question is okay, well, if he's Herbert, one, do you want Herbert? They just paid him a bunch of money. There hasn't been a lot of playoff production. But that's the other thing too. The physical prototype is different than the mental prototype. And the mental side is where a quarterback becomes elite or not. There's a bunch of dudes running around with strong arms. A guy that I bring up all the time when we have these discussions, whose name I'm now forgetting. He played for the Commanders for a hot second. He started one game during the COVID year. He went to SMU. I keep wanting to say it's Blaine Gabbert, but it's not Blaine Gabbert. Garrett Gilbert. Gilbert, not Gabbert. Garrett Gilbert was a super high recruit out of the Dallas area, out of Texas, when I was working down there. And then he wound up going to Texas and then transferred to SMU. And that dude could freaking throw a ball through a wall. Just had an absolute hose for an arm. And he's big and he's strong. Walking off the bus, Garrett Gilbert was central casting good NFL quarterback. And he was undrafted or maybe a 7th-round pick, and the only games he ever really started were emergency situations and the Washington COVID game on the Tuesday or whatever that was in 2021, because he wasn't that good at playing the position. All due respect. There are plenty of guys who fit the prototype physically. What can you do mentally? And that's where the Drake May stuff I think is really interesting, because Drake is an athlete. He's creative. He's a playmaker. He's still pretty raw and hasn't been playing quarterback as long as some of these other guys. So it seems like there should be a lot of upward trajectory, but he also is good right now on a lot of that mental stuff where he did a lot of calling of protections and stuff at the line. He handles quite a bit. The reports out of UNC in terms of his character are really high. And so there's a lot to like there. But then you watch the tape sometimes and you're like, yeah, but how often are you going to put it together that we're going to play a winning football here? Because in college, it was not as often as you'd like. And this is why it's a silly projection game. 301-230-0980. We got a whole bunch of calls lined up. We're going to start blowing through them next. So if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to you next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You can watch us there. And then, of course, don't forget, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, every pick from the Commanders of the 2024 NFL Draft is live here on the Team 980. Taking your calls, 301-230-0980 on the Team 980 listener line. Again, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's get things going for this half hour with Greg. Greg, thanks for holding. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, thanks for taking my call, man.
You got it.
I think I can alleviate some of the anxiety that we all as Redskin fans are feeling a little bit as this draft approaches.
Okay.
I think Jayden Daniels is going to be the pick. And
I don't think you're wrong, but continue.
I think he's the safe pick, Craig. When you think about him being obviously the most experienced, based on his college performance last year, he was the most explosive, most dynamic. Reports have come out that he has a great work ethic. Obviously, we know what he did with the VR. He's personable. He's humble. You get that across in any interviews or anytime you see him speak. The boy's competitive. He's got the dog mentality, which sometimes he's got to draw back from, so he doesn't take those big hits. But he's game, right? He's scary to defenses, right? Makes you have to game plan for his running ability.
For sure.
And I just think when you look at the other two quarterbacks at the top, they don't check all of those boxes. And I think that being as though, and I know some people don't care about this, but I do think the Redskin brass does, as far as galvanizing this fan base, bringing our Redskin, former Redskin, top fan base in the league.
I'm just going to tell you right now, Greg, you're really lucky that my soundboard isn't working. Otherwise, I'd be hitting you with the Doug Williams. We are the Commanders right now. I'm trying frantically to get the board up. And if you have it, you got to hit him with it. He's used the old nickname like 7 times in this phone call. That's not the name. You don't have it. It's not the current name of the football team. It's not the point, but I'm letting you know that you have not been interrupted right now by Doug Williams because I cannot get the stupid soundboard to launch. But continue on your point.
I love Doug, but I'm so thankful.
Fair enough. Continue on your good football points.
Yes. So we've got a lot of guys on one-year contracts, as you've seen with our free agent signings. So it's obvious that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and the organization are really geared to try to win as many games as they can next year. So I think you go with the safe bet, the one that most of the prognosticators, most of the experts, most of the mock drafters, the ones that's kind of the top of the totem pole, are saying Jayden Daniels is the consensus number 2. And they've kind of been saying this ever since the Combine. So that's why I say it's the safe pick. Because we don't want to we don't want to give this fan base a heart attack by drafting somebody that's not been projected as number 2.
Well, that's the thing, though. So here's the thing, Greg. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. You make everything you said about Jayden Daniels is correct. It does leave some stuff out, which is he is safe, but there's a couple of red flags with him. That one is the frame. Quarterbacks at his size typically don't succeed in the NFL. They're too light. And whether it's durability or how quickly you can be brought down or whatever the reason, like that hasn't been a formula for long-term success. That's thing one. And two, like he has, when you look at the numbers over the middle of the field, which is a big part of a lot of quarterbacks' evaluations, like he doesn't grade as high as, and doesn't seem to on film see the middle of the field as well as Drake May and J.J. McCarthy. And when you have 2 first-round receivers on the outside at LSU, that's not that big of a problem because you just keep throwing the ball to the outside and you never have to read the congestion that is the middle of the field that's even more congested in the NFL. That said, because of the way he plays and some of the defenses that are going to have to be called against him because of his running ability, and because of who the talent is here in D.C., where you have Dotson and McLaurin on the outside, and you feel like you can win out there a lot, and Cliff Kingsbury has thrown outside the numbers quite a bit historically, maybe none of that actually matters. And, like, this is the conundrum, right? There are certain things that a lot of teams look for that Jayden Daniels is the best at. There's a lot more that Drake May is the best at. And then if you want to tell me, like, hey, who's the guy that looks most like the NFL, and when you watch his tape, it's J.J. McCarthy. And so, like, this is the conundrum. So I hear you on the safe part. The one thing I will push back on Greg's call is I don't think, not that they don't care if they win games this year, but the one-year contracts were, hey, let's keep maximum long-term flexibility here. Not, hey, we are trying to load up for 1 year. Like, they needed players to play. They needed guys to set the tone. Some of those guys cost money, and some of them are veterans. But that doesn't mean that long-term they're not looking to draft replacements. Like, I would not be surprised if they take in the second or certainly in the third round Junior Colson or Edrin Cooper or one of these linebackers to be their linebacker of the future to replace Bobby Wagner. Like, Wagner might be here for a year. It might be a really important year of mentorship, but it might only be a year. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Kelly. Kelly, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman, thanks so much, man. Hey, I'm just going to start out with just a list of names here real quick. Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin, Ryan Tannehill, Brandon Whedon, Brock Osweiler, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, and Kirk Cousins. That's the 2012 draft of quarterbacks in a row. And what that tells me, you can look at all the drafts of the quarterbacks from that, the entire last 20 years of the NFL. And to answer your question at the outset of the set, the reason why there's such a disparity between who thinks Jayden Daniels should be drafted, who thinks Drake May should go above him, is because people don't really know. And there's so many variables that go into whether or not a rookie quarterback is successful. It's beyond his raw talent and his ability to grow, the team he goes to, when he goes to that team, and the system that's around him, and whether it can magnify his strengths and minimize his weaknesses. And so if you look at that draft, what you can say about this draft is that one of those guys is going to be a starter for their team. Of the top 5 quarterbacks, the chances are one of them is going to be a starter for their team 5 or 6 years out, 5 to 10 years out. One is going to be a starter for another team at the same level, 5 to 10 years out. One might be a backup, and the rest are going to be out of the league or bust or kind of, journeyman. That's really kind of what's at. And so I think what the commander brass is like, hey, by the time we get our team set after 2 or 3 more drafts, including this draft, who's the one that is most likely to be able to stick for the next 5 years after that, 8 years out? Because you really don't know. So I think
Kelly, you're that, like, if you want to be a sports talk radio host, like, we can have Anthony cut up that take you just gave, and that can be your audition tape. Because, like, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and I'm glad you brought up that 12 class, because it's a perfect example of this. Really appreciate the call. There are so many factors. Because, like, even, and if we talk about what is success versus what is failure, was Robert Griffin III a successful NFL quarterback?
By whose measures?
That's what I'm asking, right? Is like, some people would die on the hill of yes, and some people would die on the hill of no. I would tell you no. If I have the number 2 overall pick, I want that guy to be leading my team to playoff appearances for the better part of a decade. That's what I want out of that number 2 pick. And so while Robert, undoubtedly one of the most successful rookie seasons ever, Rookie of the Year, he electrified the city. Like, there was a lot. Like, really, Robert Griffin III was a good NFL quarterback for like 7 games. That's not what you're looking for at the number 2 overall pick. You want him 70 games, 100 games, 200 games. Like, that's what you're looking for. I mean, I guess 170 games would be 10 years worth, right? That's what I want out of my number 2 overall pick. And so the idea that we're thinking about right now is silly, because this team's not ready to win right now. But at the same time, maybe if they got great quarterback play, they would be. You got to, like, these are the things that people weigh. And this is why I think Alec Lewis said this. Charles Davis has talked about this with us over the past week. Like, there's so many people that agree with this sentiment, that in sports in general, the best thing you can have, the biggest competitive advantage you can have, is an owner with long-term thinking. because Josh Harris is not going to go and fire Adam Peters or Dan Quinn almost no matter how much or how this year goes. Like, I guess, yeah, if they go 0-17 and Quinn looks totally inept, then he's probably in trouble. And Peters would probably be in some level of trouble because he's the guy who hired Quinn. But Josh Harris was involved in all those decisions, so he would be like, yeah, I missed too. And something would have to go super sideways. It's not going to happen, right? So I think that long-termism where no one is afraid for their jobs the way they have been in, I don't know, Carolina, allows you to act in a way where you truly do what you think is best for the franchise, and that raises your ceiling as opposed to the short-termism that most owners have where it's like, can we get a spark next year? Can we get fans in the stands? You know, you get fans in the stands for generations, you'll win. Like, big win. Not like, oh, we got a couple of hot weeks and our quarterback's running around exciting. And by the way, running around doesn't mean that's a shot at Jayden Daniels because Drake May is going to do a lot of running around as a rookie. It just is the reality of kind of the situation here. We'll take a couple more calls next. Wrap up the hour, 301-230-0980. Speaking of Charles Davis, if you have not heard our conversation with him on Take Command that went live this morning, well, we'll get it to you coming up at 5 o'clock, just a piece here on the Team 980. Again, Dan Orlovsky at 6. Definitely don't want to miss that here on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, where you can listen to every single pick of the Commanders' 2024 NFL Draft Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You can also, of course, check it out anytime, anywhere on the free Odyssey app, / check us out anytime, anywhere on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5 o'clock, Charles Davis joins the program via Take Command. Logan and I had a great chat with Charles last week, and we finally put it out into the world today, so you can hear that when we get to that coming up in just a little bit. Right now, though, more of your calls, 301-230-0980. That's 301-230-0980. Let's go to Antoine. Antoine, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, it's good to hear from you and Ant. I think the bigger issue here, and I'm going to, if you can allow me a little latitude to elaborate,
sure,
is that everyone wants to get it right, but they want to be right, but they don't want the team to get it right. It's more important that just like what we went through with that Ben Johnson nonsense, everybody wants to be, I had Ben Johnson. If it's not Ben Johnson, then it's wrong. My thing is, my preference is Jayden, but I just want the team to get it right. And that's all that matters to me. I think that a lot of people are basing Drake May, and I'm sorry, I just don't believe him. I think a lot of people are basing their choice of Drake May off potential, his potential to possibly be Justin Herbert. Well, let's look at Justin Herbert for 1 second. How many playoff games has Justin Herbert won?
I believe it's 0. It should be 1, and then they blew that game against Jacksonville, which was not good, Antoine, not good.
That's correct. And what are people are saying? Most people are saying that Jayden Daniels is a similar or a typical, prototypical Lamar Jackson. How many playoff games did he won?
Lamar's, not good. But also, I would say I disagree with that comparison, but continue.
Well, when you look at what they had as weapons, you really can't, because Justin had Keenan, Mike Williams, Palmer. He had several. I mean,
I'm saying the Jayden Lamar thing, I just because they're good runners, they get compared, but they're different types of runners, and they're also very different types of throwers and passers. So,
right.
I think a lot of the comparison games, I think you'll actually agree with this, Antoine. Sorry to interject real quick, because I think you're making good points, but I think the comparison game gets very silly because, as I said a little bit earlier in the show, yes, physically, there's a lot of comparisons between Herbert and May, but if they're different quarterbacks mentally, if you tell me that that Drake May has 85 to 90% of Justin Herbert's physical attributes, but is a better processor and a more creative playmaker and a little bit less robotic, that might be the thing that Justin Herbert needs to win a playoff game. And if I'm getting that in Drake May, then sign me up tomorrow, Or I guess Thursday.
But the only issue is you're not getting that from Drake May. Drake May can't consistently make 5, 10, and 15-yard passes. And this thing with Jayden, and I'm just going to say from my opinion, about Jayden not throwing over the middle of the field, he doesn't have to. He didn't have to because he had 2 elite receivers on the outside. Now, what people don't realize, if you go back to his ASU days when he only had Johnny Wilson and Ricky Pearsall and a couple other guys, and Mr. Ayuk, mind you, he did throw over the middle of the field, and successfully. But no one wants to go back that far. They just want to be held hostage on what he has this year, put on tape this year. And everyone keeps saying this ceiling. What's the ceiling? He's been ascending every year.
Right.
As a freshman, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. As a sophomore, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And then in 2021, I think it was 2021, he had 10 and 10. And then after that, last year in 2022, 17 and 3. And then we had this 40 touchdown year this year. He's ascending. So we can't just say that his ceiling is lower than Drake's because we don't really know that. And I think that this team, everyone has to just calm down, relax. And just like I feel whatever they pick, whoever they pick is fine. As long as they don't pick J.J. McCarthy with the second pick overall.
Well, see, that's the thing, Antoine. I would tell you that J.J. McCarthy is not only ascending, but he has the most NFL tape of any of these guys. I don't get the McCarthy thing.
Disagree. I get the McCarthy thing. I disagree with because you can get him later.
Logistically, you definitely cannot get him later. He's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft.
I tell you what, if you trade with New England, you definitely get him. And New England will take your second pick to go up 1 to make sure they get the guy they want.
I would love that. I would love nothing more for them than for them to trade back, get extra capital, and still get McCarthy. That's ideal. I just don't think that's like, if you're New England, I don't know that you're calling Washington's bluff on that, because I feel like unless you want Jayden, like, why? And also, you're a team that's so far away from winning that adding multiple pieces is probably it. Like, Antoine, I appreciate the call. Like, there's good back and forth there. But that's the thing, is like, some of these, we do this all the time, I feel like, with trades, like in the NBA around the trade deadline. Oh, why don't they trade, the Wizards trade Tyus Jones to so-and-so for a first-round pick? Because the other team doesn't want to. Because this isn't, Madden with, or NBA 2K with override trade on. It's not even the PFF mock draft simulator where I can hit force trade when we're doing our mocks. This is real life with real general managers. And this is why this time of year, the information gathering is as important as anything. It's so essential for Adam Peters to understand what New England wants to do. It's so important for him to understand how aggressive Minnesota or Las Vegas is, and what they might be willing to give up to come up, and if they want to flip space with like the ideal situation is you trade back twice and then trade up. Like, you want to talk about I can have a dream draft, because I've got McCarthy, Daniels, and May all in the same tier. And I don't know. There's something about JJ that I really like. I think the leadership and the mentality, like, you want to talk about being a people-first organization, I think Jayden hits a lot of those notes, but I think McCarthy's special in that way. And so if you tell me I can convince Las Vegas to give up something insane, or New England to give up something insane for Drake, because I think Minnesota really likes Drake, let's say. So it's like, hey, you guys want Drake? You're going to have to come get him. Okay? We got 11-23. We got your first next year. We got a whole bunch of stuff. Now I'm sitting at 11. I can trade up, or if I can get to 3 first, and New England takes their guy, say they take Drake, right? Now, can I get Las Vegas to come up and take Jayden, because that's their guy? And then get back to 4 with some of that extra draft ammo and go take McCarthy. Like, that would be sweet. But the chances that you're going to be able to be that patient, I feel like, are slim to none. It's just going to be really hard to have that all work out in your favor, which is why ultimately I've given up on this dream a long time ago that pick, whichever guy it is that you want, just take him. And I do think one of the things that I really like is, if Peters thinks it's McCarthy, he's going to have the latitude to do that. It's not going to be an owner being like, nope, everyone else thinks this. And that stuff happens in the league. Why would you do that? Everyone else says this. You can't be, you're wrong. Pick between these two. Everyone else says it's this. They're going to pick the guy they think is best. And to go back to where we started the hour, it's Monday, draft is Thursday, and realistically, I don't think anybody knows who that is. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Talk a little NBA playoffs in the next hour, but first you'll hear from Charles Davis, and then coming up at 6 o'clock, Dan Orlovsky joins us here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube on the Team 980. If you're watching, you just saw me try to adjust my chair, and my hand slipped off the chair, and I punched the desk. That didn't feel very good.
Now I got to watch the stream on delay because I missed that.
Yeah, at first I was like, let me try to hide it. And then I was like, nope. That stings. Orlovsky in an hour. Charles Davis, just a moment. But I just was emailing with the folks over at NBC, and it looks like we're going to have Mike Tirico tomorrow.
Hey.
So I think that's going to be right off the top of the show at 4 o'clock. So don't be late for tomorrow's show. If you're not going to be able to be in your car by then, that's okay. We have a podcast, the Hoffman Show podcast. Ant works on that every single day to have it out by the end of the hour. So like hour one of the show, it's pretty much already up, I'm guessing. Yep, already done?
It's already up. Yes, sir.
Excellent. So you can check out the show on demand anytime, anywhere at your convenience, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or, of course, the free Odyssey app. Okay. Right now, though, it is time for Not My Beat, which is, well, yeah, we can play the fancy introduction. Ta-da! Oh, you have to play it, though, Ant, because this still is not working. If we don't, you want to know what? Good reason to skip it. Charles Davis is going to be in Detroit. He's going to be on the main desk for the NFL Network. Who else would you rather talk draft with? No other setup needed. Here's me and Logan and Charles Davis talking draft. What more do you want?
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Take Command podcast. That is Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman, and with us for the full show today, how lucky are we to have Charles Davis from the NFL Network, a part of their draft coverage all the way through the NFL Draft, which, of course, you can watch on the NFL Network. You got Paths of the Draft nightly at 6. You got Total Access at 7. Charles, now your bosses are happy. I have plugged the programming. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, now we are okay for liftoff. All right. Before that, runway until all the announcements were in. You guys fly a lot. I fly a lot. My biggest question with my airline people, I have to admit it, is the incessant announcements.
Yeah.
And have you noticed when the pilot comes on and announces they've started the initial descent, everyone buckle up, start returning things, etc. Go 3, 2, 1, and then a flight attendant comes on and says,
Same thing.
And I've not figured that part out yet. But anyway.
I think, Charles, when we fly to Detroit next week, we should just ask our flight attendants. Be like, hey, ma'am, sir, I have a question for you.
I have a question. You know what we ought to do? We ought to pull 10 of them, and I bet you we'll get 7 to 8 answers. Guaranteed.
I think we should both ask. We got at least, because Logan's staying put in Ashburn for this one, but I'm headed to Detroit on Thursday. You're headed to Detroit. That's at least 4 flights. I don't know if you have any connections to get there. I'm luckily straight through. So
we'll talk afterwards and see what we get.
Compare notes. I love it. All right, so we're gonna start comparing notes. We will eventually compare notes on corner, linebacker, some positions that we haven't talked about a ton leading up to this process, but certainly ones that Washington is going to be looking at. Of course, Charles played safety back in the day, so the DB's right up his alley, but certainly capable of breaking down every position in this draft. But I wanted to start with kind of a bigger picture conversation about the draft. And Alec Lewis wrote a really good piece in The Athletic about draft strategy and how teams have spent a lot of time researching like what they should do. And they know that they are supposed to trade back and that more picks is better. And yet they still on draft day can't help themselves. They'll trade up. And sometimes it works because sometimes you trade up for Patrick Mahomes. But more often than not, there are certain things that teams know they should do. They can't help themselves. And one of the things that we had Alec on the radio show, and he said he thinks one of the biggest advantages that a team can have this time of year is an owner with a long-term thinking. And Charles, you've been covering the draft for a long time. Logan, you've been thinking about it for days, and obviously we talk about it ad nauseum here from January through April. So I'm just curious for both of you guys, and Charles, we'll start with you, kind of the Josh Harris era and how a guy that comes from the finance world, this kind of long-term thinking, how it can be an advantage for the Commanders as they prepare for this draft.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage is simply him being brand new. I mean, people have been looking for a breath of fresh air for a long time, and then you have an owner come in and, I don't know how many things were startling, groundbreaking, earth-shaking in moves that he's made already. Probably not much of anything, but almost everything was positive because it wasn't Dan Snyder. That's your starting point. The next thing is if he's got long-term thinking, he's going into this with the idea that he has to have a quarterback out of this, but that's not just because this owner has to have a quarterback that he can squire around town and say, this is my quarterback, a la Sonny Werblin and Joe Namath back in the day. A la they're doing that with Robert Griffin III. This is more, this franchise has to have that leader, has to have that person who is in charge, is the face of the franchise, and gives us good play. That's why you're hearing the reports of Josh Harris sitting in on quarterback meetings, right? Meeting all these quarterback candidates that are coming to town. It's as big a decision as Washington has made in a long time football-wise. And having the long term is a big deal. Knowing that it's not just for the amusement of the owner, it's for the franchise, and can we get that person that allows us to get back into winning division championships, playoffs, and getting back to Super Bowls?
Yeah, 100%. I also think that when you have that longitudinal vision, you see teams like the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, teams that have been kind of very proactive in keeping the continuity of the organization, and they have a very strong cultural identity, which helps them draft more effectively, right? Right, Charles? They can identify people that say, hey, this is what it means to be a Raven. This is what it means to be a Steeler, because that doesn't change every 3 years. You're not having to turn over teams. You're not having to turn over personnel. And then kind of keeping, if you're willing to be patient with your head coach and your GM, they can kind of establish this cultural identity. So I do think that that long-term benefit is really helpful. And also I think, like Charles was talking about with the quarterback, it's extremely important to kind of have that, again, a long-term vision for that player, because they're not going to be a final version of themselves in year one. It's like, what are they going to be in year 3, year 4? And I'm not going to punt on this player just because I don't get exactly what I want in year 1. So I do think having kind of, again, a long-term vision for the process is extremely important, because I think ultimately, like the best teams, like the teams I just described, Philadelphia, when they were rolling a couple of years ago, they're really good at developing talent internally. And that's a long-term process. It's not a short-term flash in the pan type of moment. Helps build that culture, because again, even if I'm really active in free agency, bringing in strong players and strong personalities, are they perfect cultural fits? I don't know till they're in the building. Here, I can kind of build that up from the foundation to the rafters, and I think that, again, it all starts with the new ownership, and I think that's pretty exciting. So.
And Craig, let me just piggyback on that, because Logan's made so many great points. I'm going to zero in on patience, the word patience. The Baltimore Ravens went through a stretch with John Harbaugh as a head coach where they went, 4 straight years they didn't make the playoffs or something like that, or they went 8-8 or somewhere in that neighborhood, right? It just wasn't quite up to snuff. And there was a lot of pressure from us media types, right? Look, and you guys know, if you're in the media and you work in the media, you're part of the media. You always
we try our best, but yet here we are.
Right? But those people that we work with that go, I'm really not part of the media. I'm just kind of media, okay? Just deal with it, right? There's a lot of pressure. Hey, he's not getting it done. He's not getting us to where we used to be. And I know it wasn't easy, but let's face it, that ownership had the hard decisions, had the hard conversations. Do we still think we're headed in the right direction? Do we have to tweak some things to get to where we want to go? Do we have to make some changes in certain things? Am I going to ask my head coach to do some things differently, but I still believe in my head coach? They did all of that. What's been the reward? They're back to being that perennial playoff team again. Last year was a major disappointment because they didn't advance to the Super Bowl. They got to the AFC Championship game. They were good enough to get there. That's what you want to be year in and year out. I love how the Pittsburgh people are all upset with Mike Tomlin. I'm tired of us every year Mike Tomlin finishes over 500. Like, that's a big deal. That team last year had no business winning 10 games.
None.
And they did. Okay, so they do this all the time, and people act like it's no big deal. So, Logan, I think you make such a great point about having the patience, having the understanding. Now, what I tell people all the time is, do you really think Mike Tomlin is happy just being 500, 500 every year? You really think that's what fuels him at night? No, they're trying to find a way to get better and get there too. But you know something? You want to have that, or do you want to have one of those organizations where, as Logan has pointed out, every 2 or 3 years you're hitting a reset button, and you're fighting to get into 500 in the first place? Thank you. I think you've made excellent points on that, and that's where Washington wants to get to.
No doubt. And I think that also leads to kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. It's like another branch off this tree, if you will, which is the ability to try stuff and kind of be different than other organizations with this new, fresh perspective that Josh Harris has. And he's been an owner in other sports. He's been very successful. I think that the Sixers for him are kind of a different version of what you're talking about with the Steelers, Charles, where it's like they win 50 games every year and everyone hates Josh Harris and thinks he's a terrible owner in Philly. And I'm sitting here as someone who covers the Wizards as well, being like, they haven't won 50 games since 1978. So what are we talking about? And so I think that the ability to have tried things in other sports, such as bringing in multiple prospects together. That's kind of the hot topic as we sit here recording this on Thursday, April 18th. Yesterday, they brought in all the different quarterbacks together, and people are freaking out and trying to read what does this emoji that Jayden Daniels' agent tweeted out mean? And it's like, wow, we really have reached the peak of silly season here a week before the draft, haven't we? But I think that as we figure out the people, and Logan and I were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, like getting a chance to see these quarterbacks interact with each other and see how they are in a lunchroom, see how they are in a meeting room where there's multiple people there. And there's kind of this camaraderie that you want to understand who they are. And you're not just reliant on coaches who have an incentive to get their guy drafted to tell you the truth. And sure, you might have good relationships, but you get to see it for yourself. I love that. I love thinking differently because the draft is, even for the best teams, such a crapshoot. Ozzie Newsome famously will tell you that if you want to get 7 good players, have 14 picks. It's not about trying to target your right ones. Like he is someone who lived that multiple pick strategy. So I'm also just kind of curious what you guys think on that front, the idea of trying different things. And by the way, Belichick used to bring in a dozen guys. He talked about that on the McAfee show yesterday. So it's not completely new, but doing things differently, being willing to try things and that longitudinal approach where, if you're a GM or a coach and you try something that doesn't work, you don't have the fear that you're immediately then going to get fired because it didn't work in year one.
Yeah, let me hop in real quick because I want to get Logan into this one. And Logan, I don't want to take you away from where you wanted to go, but I want you to add to this, all right? Because it's a question I would have from a person who was in there in locker rooms and saw all of this, right? From the time you came out of college to combines, to workouts, to, your team building, everything that goes along with it. What you were bringing up, Craig, and bringing in these 4 quarterbacks, my immediate thought was, first I was a little bit snarky. I was like, oh, boy, this is kind of fun, right? Steel cage match. Whoever emerges out of here is going to be our draft pick. Ha, 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 ha. But I thought back to combine situations. I thought back to recruiting trips, okay? I thought back to any group dynamics where you're putting a number of the same type of players or same position players in and seeing how it sifts out. How do people respond to them? How do they respond to each other? Who ultimately shows that he is that person or has that thing that you're looking for, depending on what team you're on? So, Logan, whatever you wanted to go, I don't want to take you away from that. I'd love to have you talk about when quarterbacks are coming together, positions are coming together, because I'll end it with this. There's a great story that George Plimpton, I don't know if you guys know that name. He was a great writer, and he wrote a book about trying out for the Detroit Lions.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was called Paper Lion back, I think it was 1963 or somewhere. Yeah. And they tried to sneak him into camp and have some cover story. And he was a writer who was going through the NFL stuff. And he did a lot of these projects. He pitched, he played goalie, he boxed with Archie Moore. He did all those nutty things, right? But it was great writing. It was great journalism. The book I've read more than 10 times. I've loved it. But in that book, and then in a subsequent book called Mad Ducks and Bears, he detailed going to the Pro Bowl. And he was with the Eastern Conference Pro Bowl team. Allie Sherman was the coach of the Giants. He coached the team. They didn't have a meeting. They didn't have a depth chart. You'll love this one, Logan. They went out on the field for the first time.
Oh, yeah. I've heard this.
Yeah.
Yep.
You heard this story, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just said, okay, Craig, you're going to love this. Give me the first team offense over the ball. Now, these are the all-stars. This is the best of the best. They all looked at it. Now, this would have been 1960-something, right? 62, 63, 64, when Allie Sherman was at his heyday. They all looked at each other, took the measure of each other, and 11 guys walked out in the right position.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, think about nowadays. Now you have a steel cage match going. Okay, I get all that. But I'm saying they understood who the best was. That feels a lot like what you're trying to do when you're bringing these groups together. Logan, everything you want, now that I've gone so long. And please, if you could try and respond to that part for me, because I'm trying to learn too.
No, I think that's a great point, and that's something I think that's what you're looking for, right? Is you're looking when these guys come together. Like I just remember, like I do combine prep, right? Like, and when you go to the facility, there's a bunch of tight ends, there's a bunch of O-linemen, and what I'd like to do is just kind of sit in the room and watch them interact. Like, do they get along? Is anyone standoffish? Is anyone kind of combative? I also love to see when guys start talking ball, like who's the football junkie? Like when, like just as an example, does J.J. McCarthy go up to Drake May and be like, hey man, I love how you ran that zone read. Like what were your rules on that? And just trying to digest more football. And like, so you get kind of to peel back the layer of the guy in a way that you wouldn't get if they were in on their individual visit. Because the only person they're talking to, they know is important. But like, for example, like you're, at these combine preps or when they would bring guys in before you, they'd sit down at the table. Some guys are super buttoned up. Other guys are laughing and joking and bringing other guys over. Hey man, come on, sit down. I want that type of guy in my room. I want a culture where we're bringing people along, and that's a different type of leadership, but that's a type of leadership. And you don't get to see that if I'm by myself, because the only person I'm talking to is Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, and I don't get to be the person I want to be. So I think it just, again, helps kind of open the book on the athlete a little bit. And I've heard stories of guys coming for visits with just the coaches, and the coach is like, I never got a feel for who he was as a person. And then they'd bring him in with 4 or 5 other guys, or they'd get him in a setting with 4 or 5 other guys, whether that's at the combine or at his pro day. And it's like, that's who he is. And so I think this setting, taking him out to dinner with a bunch of guys, taking him to Topgolf or whatever they did, that's super important for seeing the person and seeing what type of guy you're bringing in and seeing if it gets compatible with the culture you have in the building. So I think it's extremely important.
And Logan, when you see some of these things, because sometimes when these guys come together, there's often that little bit of,
yeah,
I'm gonna be the one, right?
Yeah.
More times than not, in my experience, that person who's emerged as the guy didn't have to work at it. He just was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. I think the other point there that Charles brings up is like, what is your demeanor when you're in because this is a competitive situation, right? Can you still be a good teammate while also having the self-assured confidence that you're the guy? So I think that's exactly right. Like those are only interactions you get when they're all together. And I don't care what position, where they're from. I don't get that if I'm just talking to you one-on-one. I get that when I'm sitting back, I'm Dan at the event, and I'm watching how you talk to each other and how you interact. So I think that's why this is such a cool thing. And people are kind of saying that it's new, but I mean, Charles, when I was playing, Craig, when I was playing, like I remember them doing that all the time. You'd be in a workout, they'd be trotting guys through the weight room for their weigh-ins, talking to the strength coach. You're like, oh, I guess it's the 30 visit day, and there's 15 guys there. So it doesn't seem like that new to me, but whatever.
No, I don't think it's new at all, Logan. I think you made a great point. I can't remember if it was you or Craig talked about Bill Belichick talking about how he would bring in those groups of people. Everyone does different things with group dynamics, but for all future players who are going to go to the combine, and Logan, I need you to either tell me if I'm way off track or if I'm somewhere in the neighborhood. If you're going to the combine, one thing you will be evaluated on is how you are in group dynamics when you think no one's watching you. Whether you're having
1,000%.
Whether you're going down the hall to go meet with other teams, whether you were on time for all that, and then, hey, excuse me, sir, I have to go because I have to be at such and such place, or during the combine workout itself. Mm-hmm. Coaches love to have everybody because it's your group. The tight ends are working out. The DBs are working out. The offensive linemen are working out. Yes, you're there for you, but these coaches want to see you help someone else. They want to see you do the right thing for someone else. They want to see how that group responds and see if all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 guys clustered around one other person. Is that person? Who is that guy? These are all the things that go into it. Does it always predict it accurately? Not always, but I'd say more times than not.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think like you look at like Roma Dunze, sorry, Craig, you look at Roma Dunze, you were on the field for this, Charles, so but Roma Dunze, when he's doing his drill work, and
I think he's still going, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's like even when he's running routes, like he's dapping people up. People are supporting him. And like he's bringing people with him. And I want to see that. And you talk to people that night going out to dinner or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, so and so receiver, they were rude to the nurse at the hospital today, and I don't want that guy here." And you're like, so they're always paying attention, they're always watching, but because it's the stuff on the field's important. But ultimately, how's that guy going to be in the building? And like you said, you only see that in these group setting interactions.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm going to stop with Odunze, but my joke about Odunze is he's still going. You guys remember, he wanted a standard for himself at that combine. And remember, he ran his 3-cone and did not like his time?
Yeah.
And he kept doing it and doing it and doing it until he hit his time. This is someone now. We just left the Masters, right? And what do they say about golfers? You don't play against other golfers. You play against the course.
Yeah.
That was Odunze playing the course. It's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, I've certainly in my reporting days had position coaches and personnel execs say the same thing. Like, I want to know who that leader is in the group. Like, who's the guy that breaks down the wide receiver group? Who's the guy that breaks down the quarterback group? Like, they pay attention. But I will say this real quick, because I do feel like sometimes we can get really into the personnel dynamics. It's a part of the evaluation, and that's what I think fans need to remember is if the Commanders hated a guy's tape at quarterback, let's say for the number 2 pick, and they thought he wasn't very good, but he's awesome in the building, they're not going to draft him. So it's not like this overrides everything else, but it's a piece of the evaluation. And I know, Logan, as we've talked about quarterback, especially over the last month, and kind of thrown our hands up going, I have no idea who they should take because we like certain elements of all of the three main guys in competition here. There is like this personnel dynamic might wind up being the deciding factor, but it's only because everything else is even. If this is a tiebreaker, this is an important part of the evaluation, but it's not the entire evaluation.
It's an element. Look, we all played ball. We all did things growing up, right? You remember that senior who could barely get his pads on, but he was named captain? Because, he's a senior and he's a good guy and he was named captain. So sometimes, to your point, Craig, we get caught up in things sometimes. Like how many times we go through this? Well, the starting quarterback in the NFL doesn't have the C on his jersey. Oh, my God. Sometimes it can be too much, right? But he doesn't because he's a rookie, okay? So don't slap it on him because he's a rookie. Now, some of them earn it. C.J. Stroud earned it in about 2 days in Houston. Some of them have to grow into it. I remember a player in this league, a big-time player, and I'm not going to use his name because it's not fair to him, but he was named a captain. And then when a new coach came in, he took the captaincy from him because he said, you're just not there yet. That couldn't be easy for him. But it's just all a matter of the process of what people are looking for and sometimes earning it, not earning it. So, Craig, I think you make a great point. It's a part of it. And by the way, that player got the captaincy taken from him. His play didn't decline. He was still a terrific football player and probably was even a little more ticked off because they took the C from him. But all that being said, it's a part of the evaluation. It isn't the total evaluation. We have to make sure we understand the context of all this that goes into it. You're exactly right. The greatest guy ever who can't throw it 10 yards is not your starting quarterback.
No, certainly not the number 2 pick.
No, not even undrafted free agent, because if Logan Paulson's going out and running routes for passes and Charles Davis can't reach him throwing the football, then Charles Davis needs to go home. Okay?
I think Charles Davis can go to the broadcast booth, though. I heard he's pretty good at that.
He's pretty good,
He needs to take it to the house because we're wasting Logan Paulson's time. All right, anyway.
The great Charles Davis with us on Take Command. Part 2 and part 3 of that conversation is available now in your podcast feed where we break down a lot of the defensive players in this draft, corner, linebacker, safety. We get to it all. We'll also try to play some of it for you over the next couple of days, although we're not going to, frankly, have a lot of time to just be playing Take Command for you here on the radio. It's available for you now. Go listen to it because tomorrow on the show, we're going to push back Vibe Check Tuesday because Mike Tirico's joining us off the top of the show. Coming up in 30 minutes here on the Team 980. It's 35 right at 6 p.m. Dan Orlovsky's joining us. And the guest list is only growing as we head towards Detroit. Every single pick of the 2024 NFL Draft for the Commanders right here on the Team 980. When we get back, though, our one detour away from the draft for the day. Talk a little NBA playoffs. And then, Ant, have we decided when you are going to have your dessert yet?
Possibly
5:45.
Yeah,
Possibly gonna have to wait till 6:45. Okay.
Yeah.
My wife has made food. Ant is gonna try it live on the radio. It's tale as old as time. Every other edition of this has ended with Ant nearly falling out of his chair in love with my wife's cooking. So that is something to look forward to as well. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're well fed, and we're always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Of course, coming up this week, it is the NFL Draft, and every pick for the Commanders is live here on the Team 980. Unfortunately, there's no NBA playoff basketball here on the Team 980. No, the old Zardos, and they came up just that short. Just a little, baby.
How short is short?
I mean, if the baby was like, what's a very large, like blue whales don't take steps, but they're very large animals. Yeah. This was not the year for them, but we knew that going in.
Maybe next year.
Maybe
the
never
year
know.
after. Maybe 5 years. Maybe 10. Maybe 20.
I mean, the hope is that it's like from next, or not maybe next year. Next year you got to be closer, for sure. But like 3 years, be in there, and then like 5 years to like 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Because you build a sustainable winning culture.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of, you just keep getting stuff right.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple iterations of Wizards basketball teams.
Mm-hmm.
Give us things to talk about this time of year. Meaningful games. That'd be cool.
I can get jiggy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, Will, get on it. They're working. They're working over there. But there were 8 games this weekend in the NBA playoffs. Every single home team won. Every single higher seed won. That doesn't mean that some of these games weren't interesting. And the headliner is both because of who's involved and because it was one of the more interesting games. Is Lakers Nuggets. Your Lakers. I actually texted you during this game. I was like, LeBron, bruh. It was after he hit the 3 to end. Was it the half or the first quarter?
Half.
Yeah, that's right. It was the half. Just hits like a 36-footer. And he's just locked in. 19 points in the first half for LeBron James. And that was kind of the end of the good stuff for LeBron and the Lakers.
Yep.
That second half was not very good. Jokic, Murray, and company. And the question I would say, Ant, is was that their shot to like make hay in this series? Or was that a warning shot across the bow where, hey, they showed that they can compete? All the Nuggets did was win game 1 at home. And now if, Anthony Davis and LeBron and they can get anything out of D'Angelo Russell, can put it together for 4 quarters, we got a series on our hands.
Yeah, I think it was more the latter. I definitely think they can go out there and compete. It's more so we know we're going to get what we're going to get from LeBron. We know what we're going to get from AD. It's those others, the Ruiz of the world, the D'Angelo Russells, the Austin Reeves. They only lost by 11 this game. If, D'Angelo's hitting those shots that he was hitting routinely throughout the season, I think they can, sneak away with the game. But it's going to be tough because Denver always seems to go on, those 14-2 runs or those, 16-0 runs. They're going to weather a storm like throughout the game. So you just got to be able to, compete with that, contend with that. And the Lakers had no answer for it in the third quarter, and that's when they necessarily made their move.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. I mean, the first quarter the Lakers won, second quarter Denver won by almost identical margins.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lakers just got blown out in the third quarter, 32-18, and they tied the fourth. The problem for the Lakers is they got nothing off the bench. Taurean Prince gave them 11 points and 4 boards in 20 minutes, and then literally no one else on the bench scored. Rui only gives them 7. And D'Angelo Russell took 20 shots and hit 6 of them. And got to the free throw line 0 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to take 20 shots and you're D'Angelo Russell, like 9 threes, like you can't go 1 of 9.
Yeah.
So in a way, like if you want to look at through an optimist lens for the Lakers, like that's the optimist lens is you improve D'Angelo's shot diet a little bit. Let's get it down to 15, 16 shots. Let's not go 1 for 9 from 3. Let's go 3 for 9 from 3. Some of those shots go other places like a Hachimura that can be a little bit more efficient, and now we're cooking here. I think the other issue is, though, like, do you have the defensive bodies to compete with the way Denver can play. And I think if I'm looking at the stat sheet right now, which I am, like Aaron Gordon having 7 assists, when you watch that game and understand that like they can put the ball in his hands and let him attack and like play this weird point forward role as Jokic and Murray do their thing off the ball and, create chaos. Like they're just really hard to stop because they have so many shot creators. And like a guy like an Aaron Gordon as an extra shot creator is another person you have to worry about. And not to mention, he's the guy that typically if you blitz the Murray-Jokic pick and roll, then he winds up with the ball somewhere where he can make a play. And if he's going to make the right decision to the tune of 7 assists and 1 turnover, like that's going to be a long day at the office for anybody that's got to face Denver. Nevertheless, LA.
Yeah, I mean, those are the problems that the Nuggets have, given the Lakers the last 9 times they've gone against each other. And, Denver just seems to have their number. So, the Lakers got to figure something out. They got to figure something out. And I hope tonight is the night where, we get some from those other guys to contribute. And also that Anthony Davis continues to, be as dominant as he was in Game 1.
Meanwhile, probably the other most intriguing game from the weekend was the Sixers-Knicks game. And again, not just because it's the Knicks and it's the headline, but and it's actually the 2-7 series as well. But Joel Embiid was absolutely dominating this game. The Sixers were up. They were rolling. The Knicks had started to come back for sure, and it was going to be a dogfight down the stretch. But, like, Embiid has, like, it's a play that embodies his greatness and his dominance. Like, he alley-oops the ball basically to himself off the backboard and just dunks on the entire Knicks team and half the Sixers. They're all under the basket. But he comes down and hurts his knee, and he goes out for a long stretch. The Knicks take advantage of that stretch and then are able to hold on down the stretch once Embiid had come back. But if Embiid is the guy that played when he was playing on Saturday, then the Sixers are going to win the series. And if he's not, then the Knicks are going to win this series. And, I know we talked about like some of the other important pieces and, how they would do on Brunson, which they did pretty well, 8 of 26. And, I think if you're the Knicks, you're like, he ain't going to shoot that poorly again. Hilarious, by the way, Josh Hart postgame. When Jaylen goes 8 for 26, Josh Hart, damn, reacting to the reporter's question. Hilarious. Hart, by the way, also had 22, tied for the Knicks lead in scoring and has that monster offensive rebound late. But like when Embiid was on the floor in 37 minutes, the Sixers were plus 14. Mm-hmm. Plus 14. That's a pretty significant margin in 37 minutes. But somehow the Knicks, in the 11 minutes that Embiid was out, overcame that 14-point margin and tack on another 7 that they won by. They were plus 21 in 11 minutes with Joel Embiid on the bench. So it's pretty simple. Like, in the minutes that Joel Embiid doesn't play, other Sixers have got to hold down the fort. And if he's not able to play at that dominant level, I think this is going to be a pretty easy. Like, I think Maxi's playing really well, and like, he had 33 in the game. That's nice. It's going to be a short series if Joel Embiid is not dominant in the way that he's capable of.
Yeah, the knee injury definitely slowed him down in the second half. The drives that he was making in the first half, how aggressive he was in the first half. It just we didn't see that in the second half. And in the fourth quarter, like down the stretch, he was settling for a lot of threes and like really favoring that left knee. So again, like the success of the Sixers depends on Joel Embiid's health, and if he has to play limited or he's favoring that left leg, it's going to be tough for the Sixers to go out there and win. And Jalen Brunson also shooting that poorly, and the Knicks still managed to win. That's a little scary.
I mean, I feel like they did a good job. They bothered him with some length. Like Kelly Oubre, former Wizard, did a really good job. He's a rangy, long defender that's quick enough laterally to stay in front of a guy like Brunson. And when Kelly locks in, like he can lock in. He takes a challenge personally, and certainly did a good job amongst other defenders that they threw at Brunson. So I don't know that Brunson's just gonna like all of a sudden play better for sure. Like I would imagine his average shooting percentage is higher than it was in game 1 in the series. By all means, I'm not expecting him to be 8 for 26 bad the entire series, but I don't know that he's going to go out and dominate the series because the Sixers do have some good bodies, long, athletic, quick bodies, because you have to be quick enough to stay like where you want to be against him, knowing that he's going to manipulate space, and also quick enough to recover and long enough to recover because he's so good at manipulating space. And the Sixers actually have a couple of answers for that, including, by the way, Embiid always back there as a rim protector. So it's an interesting matchup. I anticipate Brunson playing better and probably have a game where he drops 40 because that's what he does in the playoffs. But the question is kind of where's the average, and then, of course, how long is the series to where, average matters less over the course of the series. You have one 40-pointer and a couple of 30s. The Knicks are going to be on to the next round. All right, when we get back, we'll look at the rest of the playoff action from the weekend. And again, Dan Orlovsky joining us at 6 p.m. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we're joined by Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst, about 12 minutes from right now, just before 6 o'clock. Right now, though, we're going to rip through the rest of the NBA playoffs from the weekend and look ahead to the game twos that start tonight. The last one that is tonight, and yikes for the Magic. Lost 97-83 in their opening game to Cleveland. Great day at the office for Evan Mobley. 16 points, 11 boards. Jared Allen, 16 points, 18 boards. And, oh, yeah, Donovan Mitchell, he's very good in the playoffs. 30 points for Donovan Mitchell on 21 shots. Meanwhile, the Magic shot a putrid 21% from three, and 32% from the field. That's how you score 83 points in a playoff game right there. Not good. Nice playoff debut for Pablo Banchero, 24-7. But ultimately, I think this is kind of a reminder that playoffs are different. And I'm not saying that the Magic are dead, but the playoffs are different. The Cavs have been here. The Magic haven't. And it took at least one game for the Magic to understand what it's like to play in the playoffs at that kind of intensity.
Yeah, they couldn't hit the side of a barn. And they had a whole bunch of, good shots. They were getting to the loose balls. They were getting the second chance opportunities, and they just couldn't convert necessarily. And I think that's sort of kind of why Klay Thompson to the Magic is getting, it's out there as a rumor. But just looking strictly at this game, Franz Wagner, he struggled. Jalen Suggs, he would get to the basket and not be able to finish. So it's more so just, these guys being young, being inexperienced, and still having, more to prove, more to build on. But if I'm the Magic and if they go out here and, lose 4-1 or get swept,
still a great year.
Yeah, still a great season for the Magic.
Still a great year. But I do think that they'll compete. Especially when they get home.
Hard. Yep.
When they get home, I think it'll be better. But, that atmosphere, that level of intensity where the defense is ramped up, playoff style, that's different. And the Cavs have been there. They've been in tight series. Mitchell's won a bunch of playoff series. Or at least a few playoff series. Had monster playoff performances. Obviously, think back to the bubble, the duels between him and Jamal Murray when he was in Utah. So, different caliber. Suns and T-Wolves. Oh, man. Bro. Ant Edwards is a problem. 2
words, man. Ant-Man.
What do you know about Ant-Man?
He's nasty, man. He's talking so much trash.
He is, people are giving Jay Williams and others flack for the MJ stuff, but, he's obviously not Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
He is obvious. I cannot stress this enough. He is obviously not Michael Jordan, but stylistically, he is Jordan-esque in the way. It's like the NFL draft comps where it's like, this guy's John Elway. And it's like, no, I see why you say that, but he's probably not going to be John Elway. Yeah. Anthony Edwards, though, some of the footwork, the way he plays, I mean, obviously he's got the wristband right up where MJ used to wear it. So there's just the size, the length, the athleticism, and the fact that he has now figured out this jump shot. He's nasty, man. He's a bona fide top 5 player in the league. I think we kind of saw it with USA basketball over the summer where, who's the alpha that steps forward amongst all those alphas? It was Anthony Edwards. And we're seeing it right now. We'll see what kind of adjustments Phoenix makes, and we'll see if they can figure out a way, like so many other teams have, to play Rudy Gobert off the floor. What does Cat give you? Cat lives in foul trouble and only plays 27 minutes in this game. But when Edwards is playing like that, and you get some of the bench production you get, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 18 points off the bench. He's a plus 28 in 29 minutes. Yeah, man, and the other thing is, unlike a lot of young teams, maybe like the Magic, they look at those vets that have been there, and they are not scared. They are not scared at all of the Phoenix Suns. I think if you ask the Wolves, they're like, yeah, we're the favorites for a reason. We're supposed to beat them. Doesn't mean Kevin Durant can't pull something out of his behind, but whew, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, to watch those two guys go at it. But the Suns got some things to figure out, man. Booker has to play better. KD has to shoot the ball better as well. These guys have so much experience. They shouldn't be getting run off the court like they did against the Suns. Losing by 30? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, not good. All right, we got about 1 minute each for the rest of these games. Heat, Celtics, nice, gigantic 20-point win for Boston. Really the only drama in this game is late, the Tatum thing. The idea that Eric Spoelstra told someone to hurt someone is ridiculous. But obviously a scary fall for Jason Tatum there. Not a lot to talk about. The Heat don't have Butler. They don't have a chance. Even though they're the Heat, and you always give them a chance. Clippers and Mavs. Dallas scored 8 points in the second quarter. 8 points in the second quarter. The game plan that the Clippers had was so good. I saw someone say Ty Lue was in his bag. Boy, was he. I mean, it just felt like so often when you watch Luka and Kyrie play, it just feels like they're playing a different sport, the way they're able to manipulate and find space and get to their spots. It felt like they got to their spots and there were 3 Clippers there every single time. Really, really dynamic job by Ty Lue defensively and a great job to execute by the Clippers without Kawhi. I was right on that part. I was like, can't trust Kawhi. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, they win anyway.
Yeah, that one surprised me just because I thought the Mavs would be able to, figure something out, weather the storm. The Clippers got out to a strong start, and, even without Kawhi, I think Paul George, he just did a great job, elevating his play. Also, Russell Westbrook gave some great minutes off the bench as well. Again, that team, they're full of, savvy veterans. They've all been there. They all want to win, and, you got to tip your hat to them. That's game 1. We'll see what they do in game 2.
For sure. This series I'm still real squirrely on. Bucks and Pacers. The Bucks got out like gangbusters, scored 69 in the first half, 69-42 at half. Lillard had 35 at halftime.
Yes.
But he finished with 35. Yeah. And so I don't know what to make of this. I do think Indiana still has a shot in this series. Ultimately, Milwaukee had a great half and then, held on to win at home. They've won one game. Scoring like that, look, the Pacers will give up some points. They play at a crazy fast pace. So this is not unheard of, but I don't feel super confident if I'm Milwaukee. Also don't feel super confident if I'm the Thunder, only 94-92 win. We talk more about that game tomorrow ahead of their game 2. Next though, Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst, joins us on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are efforting Dan Orlovsky, who is driving somewhere in central Connecticut after his day on television. And cell service in central Connecticut can always be a little spotty, but we got our guy right now. It's our pleasure to welcome in ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky. Dan, what's up, man? How are you?
Craig, I'm doing great, bud. How are you, dude?
I am good. I am ready for this draft to be here, as I'm sure you are as well. But I wanted to obviously talk quarterback with you, but I specifically wanted to kind of dive in to what seems to be a disconnect between a lot of analysts who cover the league and cover the draft specifically, who spend a lot of time on the draft, and those in the league that maybe focus on the NFL more year-round and then get to the draft this time of year. One group, the former, has a lot of love for Drake May and has been on Drake May for a long time. The latter seems to be all in on Jayden Daniels. I know that you're quite fond of both guys, but really have Daniels ahead at this point in the process. So where do you think that disconnect comes in? Why do you think that's the case? And do you agree that that seems to exist?
My honest answer is I don't think a lot of people know what they're looking at, or what they're, what's needed to play that position at a high level consistently in the NFL, and that, physical talent and potential sound really good, and there's some examples of what those guys have become in the NFL, but it's more so about what is going to be that consistent performance on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. Playing football in the NFL is not playing football in college football at that position. And, I've said this for years, Greg, like, most people think about the NFL draft and they think about all the positions the same way. Big, fast, tall, powerful, strong. If I've taken a running back or defensive end or wide receiver in the top 5, yeah, the physical is the most important thing. When you're taking a quarterback, the physical is secondary to some of the things and most of the things that are difficult to measure and see with the naked eye unless you know what you're looking at, trying to visualize. And, without kind of knowing some of the position, it's just hard to evaluate it.
Do you think that Patrick Mahomes has broken all of our brains in that people are chasing the next Mahomes instead of looking for the things that maybe more consistently over the history, even the recent history of the league, sans Mahomes actually works at that position? Because obviously Pat was a high upside guy coming out of Texas Tech. And so I just wonder if, because he's it right now, maybe that's changing the way people look at the position and it might not be for the better.
Yeah, I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault. I joked that it was all Tom Brady's fault because everyone was trying to find the next Tom. And it was like, great, go find the kid that's been doubted his absolute whole life, that was talented enough to go to Michigan, but then doubted again his whole life and was in many ways a maniac and went to the most maniac organization in the history of the NFL. So I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault, and great, go find the unbelievably physically talented kid that grew up in professional sports and, was, again, overlooked and, went to a team that had one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the game and a playoff-ready football team, So there's a little bit of that, and teams are constantly chasing that chasing to try to find and every coach in the NFL thinks they can coach up the bad in a player or the flaw in a player, and there's parts of that are true, but we have lost a little bit of the reality of that position, surely.
Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst, with us here on the Hoffman Show. What I love about your answer there, Dan, too, is that you mentioned kind of the bio of these guys, like who they are matters, how they're wired matters, and the circumstances they go to matter. So with all of that said, why is Jayden Daniels the right pick for Washington to you?
Yeah, I think he's the best quarterback in this class. If you just take the quarterbacks that we put in that top 6 to 8 group over the last 5 to 7 years on a year-to-year basis, what are the things that they are doing that are better than everybody else? Number one, They don't panic with the football when other quarterbacks do. Whether they get fooled by coverage, whether they get an unblocked defender, whether they have to subtly move in the pocket. I think Jayden does that the best. Number two, their ball placement is better than everybody else's. Accuracy is throwing it to my guy. Ball placement is throwing it away from the defensive guy. I think Jayden does that the best in this class. The explosive plays in the NFL and what they look like. There's just not a lot of guys in the NFL that get, top 5 or top 7 in explosive plays that are getting it off screen passes. Like the explosive plays that are the 12, the 15 to 25-yard throws, what do they look like? Because you could tell me, this guy's got 100 explosive plays and 75 of them are off screen. Great, that's not real in the NFL. So what guy's throwing, off one hitch on a deep crossing route over a dropping linebacker, but before the collapsing safety? What guy is seeing that driving safety and replacing with the backside post? Jayden Daniels is that guy on top of obviously elite 4.4 athleticism. So I think he's got the fastest eyes in this class. I think he's got the most consistent and repeatable arm and throwing motion in this class. I still think the world of Caleb Williams. He's unbelievably talented. I just think there's the development in Jayden's game that's very real.
One thing that I think is hard to evaluate for all of these guys in a variety of ways, but I think of this the most with Daniels and with J.J. McCarthy. And with Daniels, it's specific parts of his game. With McCarthy, it's the whole thing. Is just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean they can do it, or just because you've only seen it a little bit doesn't mean they can do it. If I had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., I wouldn't throw over the middle of the field a ton either. I would throw a bunch of fades and box fades and all the things that Jayden's got endless highlight reel type throws of doing. But how do you evaluate for Jayden specifically, him over the middle of the field, knowing that in an NFL offense, you're probably going to have to work those multi-layer throws with traffic all over the place in a way that he didn't have to do consistently at LSU?
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I've seen that said, and I probably should have asked, where does that come from? The whole Jayden doesn't, is that a numbers thing? Because Greg, I'm in the car right now. I could pull out my notebook.
I think you should probably not do that, Dan. I think you should just drive straight and with both hands on the wheel, but that's just me.
I'm a great driver. I'm a great driver with my knees, man. But I've got so many games where I sit here and I go, oh man, just ripped it over the field to number 3 on the crossing route. Oh, dude, that's a great job with your eyes.
For sure.
Versus Florida, first quarter, 8:58, second quarter. I have so many examples. Go to the Missouri game, go to the Alabama game, where he's just getting to number 2 or number 3 on an in-breaker or a seam route or a crosser. I don't know where that has come from. I don't know.
I think it's a percentages thing, Dan, because I think that because he has been able to throw outside again, because why wouldn't you when you got those dudes out there so much? There are obviously a ton of fades, a ton of comebacks, a ton of hitches on his tape, in a percentage that's higher than a guy like May, where he maybe works the middle of the field more. McCarthy's working the middle of the field more. If you watch McCarthy, it looks NFL-y, especially to those of us that have watched a lot of West Coast stuff over the years, for me covering like Sean and all the disciples of him here. But I think you're 100% right. It's there. And that's kind of, I guess, the question, right, is the tendencies are part of the evaluation. Where's it that you look? And I guess for you, what you would say is hey, he can do it. If the defense takes him there, it's fine. It's not that he's choosing to go outside because he can't see over the middle. That's where the stuff is. Does that make sense in terms of maybe reframing the question?
Yeah, I would tell you I think it's the opposite of I think he's really good at it. I think he sees it really well. I think he cuts it loose really well. I think he throws it into the right windows. It's a little bit of their style of offense as well at LSU was he had a lot of control. They used a lot of pre-snap motion. And so he got a lot of data and information before the snap, and that's why the ball came out relatively quickly, and he made pretty consistent decisions. So, Craig, I don't have the reservations for Jayden of, oh, man, is he going to be able to throw over the NFL, over the middle of the field in the NFL? I have zero concern with that. If you ask me what do I think is the one thing I think this is a little bit nitpicky for me, but, like, are there moments where he drops his eyes from a clean pocket because he sees the seam and wants to take off? Yeah, I don't think it's that paramount, but I do see some elements of that, but again, that's not an over concern of mine.
No doubt. I know you got to run, Dan. Thanks so much for your time, man. Hopefully run into you in Detroit later this week, and we can have you back on after the pick and talk about this a little more.
You got it, bud. Be well, travel safely.
Thanks, you too. That is Dan Orlovsky, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Really interesting there. I want to run back what he said at the end because I don't want to get into it, obviously, because we're running up against a hard stop with Dan there. But this is not just people looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. It's something that Logan has talked about, and some of the other folks that I know that watch a bunch of tape that they maybe see that middle of the field a little bit different, but I think when it comes to studying quarterbacks, Dan is as good as it gets, certainly that we have access to in the media space, a guy that's, been rumbled about for quarterback coaching jobs and such over the past couple of off seasons and has obviously not gotten them or chosen by his own free will to stay at ESPN. That the ESPN life's probably a lot better than the NFL coaching life, that's for sure. And Dan's got a young family, et cetera. So I trust Dan on that in a lot of ways, but it's definitely something that I think is worth parsing out. So let's do that, and we can get your calls in 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live as well on YouTube at the Team 980. Every single pick of the 2024 NFL Draft for the Washington Commanders is right here on the Team 980. Again, thanks to Dan Orlovsky. He will be a part of ESPN's draft coverage this week, obviously leading up to the draft in Detroit on NFL Live weekdays at 4, and every single pick of the draft period is on the ESPN family of networks this weekend. Dan had some interesting things to say to me about Jayden Daniels and some of the criticism around him. I wish we had more time to get into some of the other things as I look up on television to what is clearly a pre-tape segment with Dan earlier today, because we know that Dan is in his car right now. He must have been on SportsCenter with Kevin Nagandi earlier in the day. But anyway, he talked about how I brought up the big criticism of Daniels in terms of his resume or his tape, which is there's a common criticism that he does not throw the ball over the middle of the field as well as some of the other guys, that he doesn't necessarily read the field as well. And in fact, while I play Dan's response to this, I want to go back, and I'm going to see if I can find it real quick in our archives here. We talked about this on Take Command, and I want to let Logan kind of talk about this or play you what Logan said, if I can find it quickly. But here was Orlovsky just a few moments ago with us on the idea that just because Jayden winds up throwing the ball outside quite a bit with Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. out there, that he struggles at all to see and execute over the middle of the field.
Yeah, I would tell you I think it's the opposite of I think he's really good at it. I think he sees it really well. I think he cuts it loose really well. I think he throws it into the right windows. It's a little bit of their style of offense as well at LSU was he had a lot of control. They used a lot of pre-snap motion. And so, he got a lot of data and information before the snap, and that's why the ball came out relatively quickly, and he made pretty consistent decisions. So, Craig, I don't have the reservations for Jayden of, oh, man, is he going to be able to throw over the NFL, over the middle of the field in the NFL? I have zero concern with that. If you ask me what do I think is the one thing, I think this is a little bit nitpicky for me, but are there moments where he drops his eyes from a clean pocket because he sees the seam and wants to take off? Yeah, I don't think it's that paramount, but I do see some elements of that, but again, that's not an over concern.
For me, that's not a concern either, because if Jayden Daniels is decisive, then that's fantastic, because Jayden Daniels is a really good runner. And so to be able to be decisive and get out and do the things early, I think that is that's an essential part of him being successful in college and certainly in the NFL as well. I will say the thing that Dan likes the most about Jayden, or seems to like the most about Jayden, is the thing that drew me to him initially and has very much brought me back to him as I've continued to watch and rewatch stuff from the 2023 season specifically, and even some of the stuff from earlier in his career. He is just cool as a cucumber. There is something about a guy who just seems to be in control of everything that is happening. And there is a freneticness to Drake May's game that scares me. And I think I don't know that I've ever been able to articulate it that clearly before. Anthony, maybe this draft process is long enough. Maybe it took me 4 months to be able to say that and finally have the clarity. This is why you have Orlovsky on. He makes me better. That's it right there. If you tell me, why do you like Jayden Daniels over Drake May? It's because Jayden Daniels has a composure to him all the time. Even when things don't go well, he's calm until the point that he gets sacked. He never panics. And Drake May plays with a general freneticness that doesn't feel like it's always in control. I would tell you that Drake May fans would probably tell you if you were under the kind of duress that Drake May was because his offensive line was terrible and your defense is terrible, then you also would probably occasionally look a little flustered. And if you had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. and the slot receiver kid whose name I'm forgetting but is possibly a first rounder next year, then you might also look composed. But it is what it, like, maybe, but all we have is the facts as they are. And the facts as they are would include Drake May plays with a kind of freneticness that I think really scares me. And Jayden Daniels does not. He plays cool, calm, under control, which is something that I think really appeals to Dan Orlovsky, who, again, just joined us here a moment ago.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I've seen that said, and I probably should have. Where does that come from?
That is not the right bite that I wanted to play. You pause right there. And do we have bite 3 on why the Commanders should draft Jayden? Looks like part 1 of bite 4 might have gotten saved over that.
I do have it.
Can you play yours and see if yours works?
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I've seen
that's the other one. That's all right. We'll find it and relabel it. I think this answer, though, is also very illuminating on that front. I asked Dan about, like, are we now just chasing the next Patrick Mahomes, and is that a big mistake? Here was Orlovsky, and it leads into what I was going to say about the calmness and all that kind of stuff with Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault. You know, I joked that it was all Tom Brady's fault because everyone was trying to find the next Tom. And it was like, great, go find the kid that's been doubted his absolute whole life, that was talented enough to go to Michigan, but then doubted again his whole life. It was in many ways a maniac, and went to the most maniac organization in the history of the NFL. You know, so I've always joked that this is all Patrick's fault. You know, and great, go find the unbelievably physically talented kid that grew up in professional sports and, you know, was, again, overlooked and, you know, went to a team that had one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the game and a playoff-ready football team. You know, so there's a little bit of that, you know, and teams are constantly chasing that and, you know, chasing to try to find and every coach in the NFL thinks they can coach up the bad in a player or the flaw in a player, and there's parts of that are true, but you know we have lost a little bit of the reality of that position, surely.
I think the question I would love to, like, if we had more time, if I had an hour with Orlovsky and we could just sit down and talk about quarterbacking, is like, then what are you chasing, right? If it's not worth it to chase Mahomes, and chasing Mahomes looks very similar to chasing Allen, which in a way looks kind of similar to chasing Lamar. Like, what do you have that's elite? Can we then incubate and grow the other parts of your game while you are an elite creative playmaker that occasionally we let run wild? But can we do enough around you and create you the right environment, which Dan talks about beautifully there, to get that out? And so if you're Jayden Daniels, what is it that is elite about you? And I think that is in part the question if you're taking the number 2 pick and you want this guy to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I think the answer would be, one of the things that Dan said that I haven't heard a lot of places that I like a lot as an answer here is, like, he's got the fastest eyes in the draft. That means he's taking in a lot of information, processing it quickly, moving on to the next thing. Like, that is elite. If that can be who Jayden Daniels is, he's going to be a really freaking good player. But I think that's why a lot of folks do gravitate towards May, is because he has more elite physical traits. And it's like, can we incubate that and round out the rest of his game? And if so, are we looking at one of the best quarterbacks in the league? But ultimately, Orlovsky says, no, the elite guy's actually Daniels. And obviously we know as a runner what he can do, but it's way, way more than that.
Yeah, I think he's the best quarterback in this class. If you just take the quarterbacks that we put in that top 6 to 8 group over the last 5 to 7 years on a year-to-year basis, what are the things that they are doing that are better than everybody else? Number one, They don't panic with the football when other quarterbacks do. Whether they get fooled by coverage, whether they get an unblocked defender, whether they have to subtly move in the pocket. I think Jayden does that the best. Number two, their ball placement is better than everybody else's. Accuracy is throwing it to my guy. Ball placement is throwing it away from the defensive guy. I think Jayden does that the best in this class. The explosive plays in the NFL and what they look like. There's just not a lot of guys in the NFL that get, top 5 or top 7 in explosive plays that are getting it off screen passes. Like the explosive plays that are the 12, the 15 to 25-yard throws, what do they look like? Because you could tell me, this guy's got 100 explosive plays and 75 of them are off screen. Great, that's not real in the NFL. So what guy's throwing, off one hitch on a deep crossing route over a dropping linebacker, but before the collapsing safety? Or, what guy is seeing that driving safety and replacing with the backside post? Jayden Daniels is that guy on top of obviously elite 4.4 athleticism. So I think he's got the fastest eyes in this class. I think he's got the most consistent and repeatable arm and throwing motion in this class. I still think the world is Caleb Williams. He's unbelievably talented. I just think there's the development in Jayden's game that's very real.
In a word, it's consistency. Consistency of reading it, consistency of throwing it, consistency with who you are every day, and the consistency of growth, getting better year over year, which is something that we've seen from Jayden Daniels. It's why a lot of folks have landed on him at number 1 or number 2 on their boards. Obviously, a lot of other people disagree. We'll only have a couple more days till we find out who Adam Peters thinks is worthy of that number 2 overall pick. Take a couple of your calls in reaction to Orlovsky next. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And I'm going to turn the camera around real quick. What is happening down the hall? Look at how many people are down there at the fan. They're just having like a whole town hall without us. You got Linnell and Donald getting ready for overtime. Grant and I don't think Danny stuck around because it's their show ended like 5 minutes ago. Danny's way out the door by now. But Toby's down there. Darius is down there. Ryan's down there. Having a whole party down there.
Do you have FOMO?
No, I just want to know what they're talking about. So I guess, yeah, a little bit. But, like, I'm not, like, out of insecurity, out of curiosity.
I have a serious case of FOMO.
Oh, do you want to go down there and just go like, hey, what's up, guys?
I think they're about to be walking away.
It does look like they're about to disperse. That would be what if Grant's on his phone right now? What if I call Grant? I'm just like, hey, buddy, what are you guys talking about?
I think he'll answer.
He probably would. Kind of tempted.
Did they turn the corner already?
No, Grant's walking away now. Looks like he's about to call someone. I don't know. Darius is laughing. I don't know. He's probably going to come down here. Darius has been coming down here to say hi to you after they get done. Because you guys are mad and trash talking.
Well, not necessarily mad and trash talk. He asked for some advice on how to be one of the users that he's never beat, that I beat.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you got a A is greater than B, B is greater than C situation.
Sort of, kind of.
But is C greater than A? That's the question. Because he's beat you beat this other dude, and he hasn't beaten the other dude.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's crazy, right? But
yeah.
It's all good. It's a new season. We have our draft tonight at 8 p.m.
Oh.
And guess who I'm taking with my first pick in the 2030 NFL draft?
Do you have the first pick?
I have the 22nd pick.
How do you know who you're going to take at 22?
Because I don't think anyone else is going to take what I'm going to take.
Are you sure that no one else listens to the show that is in your league?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to turn down the content.
I mean, I will be surprised if they did, but I'm taking a center. Yeah. My team is loaded everywhere else, like receiver, quarterback. Sam Howell's my quarterback. I have a 95 overall running back. My line is, young and developing.
You say you're loaded and Sam Howell is your quarterback. How good is Sam Howell by 2030?
So this is my first full season with Sam. When I got him, he was an 82. Now he's a 92.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been airing it out with Sam Howell. He's been my savior.
You just got strong arms and good decision making.
Yes, sir.
You get to be the brain. You get to keep Sam's arm. Okay, I see. That's not a bad plan.
Yeah.
Who's your center that you're taking?
I couldn't even tell you. I mean, he's the best center in the draft. That's what I'm taking. The best available.
That's funny.
Yes.
All right. Look forward to hearing about all that.
Thank you, sir.
Probably not on the air, though.
No.
It's more time than the Madden probably needed. But that was a funny bit. So the chuckles are worth it. So Orlovsky just joined us at the top of the hour. So 6 o'clock, he was with us and talked about why he thinks Jayden Daniels is easily the pick for Washington at 2 and why he doesn't have concerns over Daniels and the processing and the middle of the field. And like he's seen it, and he's right. There is stuff on tape that is good. But I was able to find the clip of Logan talking about this. And so here is Paulson talking about why Daniels and the middle of the field is not. It's not that he's bad, and it's not that he doesn't do it, but it's just harder from an evaluation standpoint than other guys for reasons that you will hear.
When we talk about the processing speed, I'm guessing that is in the pros column for Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me for a long time. And then I think, when was it? Last weekend, I went through and I watched all of his throws again. And I think the thing about Jayden that is, it's not his fault, and I don't know exactly how to quantify this, is the offense and the passing concepts are like incredibly simplistic. It's like, here, run a hitch. Here, we got 3-by-1 away. We're going to work a comeback. And it's like there's not, and he's doing a good job of getting the ball out with timing and anticipation. But I heard someone, I forget who I heard say this, but basically, like, because he's got such good receivers, he can throw the ball with great anticipation, understanding they're going to win. It was kind of like the same thing with Dak Prescott 2 years ago when he had, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and all these guys that were just going to win. And he could throw a comeback almost blind. He'd be looking to the left, shift his feet and throw the comeback. And he could throw it on time and on rhythm, and he knew the guy was going to win. There's a little bit of that to Jayden Daniels where it's like you're working outside the numbers. And if we're working over the middle of the field, and this is not all the time, but it's like a crossing route late where everything's been cleared out. There's a guy wide open. You hit him in stride. So great job with the ball placement. Great job with the accuracy. Like there's sometimes where you're watching Drake May where he doesn't hit those throws because his fundamentals aren't right. So you got to give credit where credit's due. He's hitting the throws he's supposed to hit. But there's just an ease to the offense from an intellectual standpoint that is very, very high. Like it's very easy for him. So like that's where it's like the processing is really good. He's getting the ball out. The timing's excellent. He's hitting these, like there's a couple deep kind of digs he's hitting. Great. But there's so much space because of the guys he's throwing to, because of the route concepts, because of the protection, because of the trust he has in the receiver. So again, I don't really know how to quantify that. It's not a negative to him, but it definitely decreases the kind of how impressive the processing was from his standpoint. Now there's games like the Texas A&M game where they're bringing a ton of zero pressure. They're bringing like everybody up at the line of scrimmage, and he's checking to different stuff. He's checking different protections. He's processing that, and then they drop out, and he's got to make a decision about where to go with the ball. I like that stuff a little bit more, and he seemed to handle that pretty well. So it's there. It's just the level of difficulty isn't always dialed up to 10. It's kind of in this, 5.5, 6 range. Still give credit where credit's due, and I like him. And I think it's important to note this. His film is the best of everybody's, right? He's the Heisman player. He's the Heisman winner for a reason. He's a really good football player. But the level of difficulty on some of that processing is hard for me because there's not NFL level difficulty all the time, and it's kind of rare in his tape actually. So.
Yeah, we've gone full circle today. I don't know. I don't know what to do with these quarterbacks.
I don't know either. I hope that helps.
I don't think it does. Because the thing is, we feel like we get someone who knows, and then you're like, well, what about this?
Yeah.
What about this? I can do more. We went ESPN for one. Why don't we go ESPN on ESPN Crime? You want Orlovsky all in on Jayden Daniels? Okay. Well, I asked Mina Kimes who she would take. Here's Mina, as long as this file's gonna, of course, of course it's now gonna reload. Oh, now it wants me to log in. Oh, that's a dirty trick. I set up everything, Ant. I was ready. I was prepared. Now we have to go through our very highfalutin security process for me to be able to get to this file where Mina Kimes talks about Drake May, and eventually I'm going to get to that file, and then we're going to play it. I'm not even going to wait for it to download. The video people will just have to hear it. Here's Mina Kimes on Drake May and why she would go with
If I put
him.
you on the clock and say Jayden Daniels, Drake May, who's your pick for Washington at 2?
Yeah, my pick is Drake May, which going into this whole draft season, I thought was going to be the consensus. Turned out it's far from the consensus. In fact, you've got Jayden Daniels now being picked to go first overall by some analysts. Not going to happen, but some of my colleagues like him better than Caleb Williams. But for me, it's May for a number of reasons. I think the biggest one is I just think the traits at this point, when you look around the NFL and you see the quarterbacks like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, there's just that common thread of the unbelievable arm talent with the second reaction ability is something that I see in May, which isn't to say he's going to be any of them, but I think he's very unique in that way. I also think at North Carolina, he faced a ton of adversity this season, really difficult situation, lapses in pass protection, vastly inferior weapons, of course, to Daniels. And I think that explains a lot of the issues at time you saw on tape. So I like his upside a lot. Might take him a second to sort of reach the ceiling, but I think because of how high the ceiling is, I would take him second overall.
I think what I want to do, Ant, on Thursday is I want to go back probably to the Combine. I want to go through every interview that we've done between Take Command and this radio show. And I'm going to pull we're going to do just a compilation of every single analyst we've had. May, Daniels. We got a little bit more time to get a couple more in between now and then. But I think it would be fun to listen to. Basically, we get to sit back, hit play, and then watch them fight each other.
I think what will also be interesting is to see who you would go with versus who you think the Commanders are going to take.
Yes. And
Because
as
I feel like we still necessarily haven't made our picks either.
Well, that's the thing, is eventually we're going to have to get a prediction on both of those things. And again, here's Kime on Sheehan's podcast earlier today.
If I were to tell you that Jayden Daniels wasn't the pick, but they picked a quarterback at number 2, based on the last minute, you mentioning J.J. McCarthy more than Drake May, is it fair to say that John Kime would predict or would guess the best chances would be J.J. McCarthy at 2 over Drake May?
Probably. I don't, and that's probably.
Okay.
Yeah. How's that?
Perfect.
The hard part is, unless you hear it from a high thing, it's really hard to know. So you can start to overthink some things, and you start to piece some things together, and it's this. If the order was that, it would not surprise me at all.
Of course, that's between McCarthy and May. Jeff Legwold from ESPN put out his top 100 today, and he's very good at this, and he has McCarthy over May. He's got Daniels over both of them, and still everyone around the league seems to think that Daniels is the guy at 2, so the McCarthy-May order doesn't really matter at that point. In other words, we'll find out on Thursday. You'll hear it right here on the Team 980 when we get back. Final segment of the show. Real things, real people said in real microphones. Got a couple of doozies. And Anthony will try my wife's lemon blueberry bread and will probably be very happy. Hoffman Show wrapping up here on the Team 980. Of course, BetMGM tonight. Coming up next, maybe Ashu's back. Maybe he's not. It's summer. Who knows? Who knows where that devilish man is, Nick Ashu. This is not what people say. Devilish looking man? I don't know. He's got very nice hair. That's the point. Nick and Trista and Ryan, who joined us last week up here, they're coming up at 7 o'clock. Ant, you have a snack in your hand. I'm jealous. But it's okay. I have some for me at home. A couple weeks ago on Instagram, my wife, Rachel, discovered this lemon blueberry bread recipe. And instantly we wanted to make it because it's like a part breakfast bread, part dessert bread. It's a sweet bread, obviously, one of those. But not a sweet bread, if you know what a sweet bread is. So we've made a couple of loaves now. We've made muffins out of this recipe. We've made regular loaves of bread. And you have in front of you a slice of our most recent loaf that was made over the weekend. And you're about to dive in, and you're going to give us a review and a taste test live on the air. There's a big smile on this young man's face right now. Just an enormous smile and a mouthful of food.
Man, oh my gosh. Delicious. Delicious, delicious, delicious. First things first, I would like to thank the First Lady of the Hoffman Show.
Yes.
For making me this blueberry lemon cake.
And by the way, she was like, you have to bring some to Anthony. She wrapped that up herself, put it under my keys so I didn't forget, which is a pretty foolproof way, but I occasionally will just pick up the keys on top, off top of something and walk out of the house. Like, I put it under your keys. No, you should have put it on top of the keys because then I would have had to actually pick the thing up. But no, she made sure that got in your hands.
Yes, I think both of you do a great job of feeding me and expanding my palate.
Yes, we have definitely done that. What trying to think, what else have we? Yeah, dumplings is the big one. Yes. A show highlight for sure. A classic moment in Hoffman Show history.
What is it?
The chicken salad. That had the grapes in it.
And the bread that you guys use, I don't know what it was.
Oh yeah, I think that was just. I don't think the bread was particular. Like that wasn't homemade. It was just.
I've just never had that kind of bread though.
Yeah, I think you just need to be a little bit more adventurous in the bread aisle.
Yeah. What else?
Well, I mean, we went to lunch today.
Yeah.
And we got the same sandwich, which is one I introduced you to.
Yep.
You did have a pretty funny moment. You're like, "Are these red tomatoes?" And it's like, "No, they're red peppers," which I think was just like a slip. And I don't think it was you actually thinking they were tomatoes. You just said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But I do think the first time you had that sandwich, like if I told you, "Hey, there's gonna be roasted red peppers on a chicken sandwich," you would have been like, "Huh?"
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys have done a great job of just broadening my horizon a little bit. But
is there something that you've been wanting to try, or that you've thought about or heard about recently?
That's a great question.
I'm trying to think.
Now that I've been wanting to try, Mexican food maybe something.
I mean, how you definitely had Mexican food.
Yeah, I've had Mexican food before, but maybe something in that. Maybe in that a cuisine, a Mexican cuisine.
Okay, like Mexican, South American of some different style. Like, are you typically like when you go to a Mexican restaurant? What do you get? Are you a taco guy, burrito guy?
Probably just getting a regular taco, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple places that I think pop to mind that we could do some experimenting with.
All right.
Because I'm kind of like, now let's go around the world. Like South American food, okay. You got all your different varieties of all those different cuisines. There's obviously some crossover, and then there's some very unique things to certain countries in Central and South America. There you go across. One thing I would like to do is go to some of the amazing African spots around DC. There's like bomb Ethiopian food, all kinds of different. I say Ethiopian because there's a specific place that I have in my brain that I really want to go. But there's a bunch of different African food spots around that I definitely want to hit.
Thai food is really good. I got introduced to Thai food.
Thai food is great.
Year.
Okay, we can definitely do some Thai.
Okay. At
some point when we need to get lunch, like we should do. There's a great like Thai delivery takeout spot that I can definitely get for us. I'm trying to think. The rest of Southeast Asia, Vietnamese.
I haven't had any.
Okay, that's definitely good. Have you ever had any Filipino food?
I don't think so.
We could definitely do that. What else can we do? Obviously, there's the entire European continent, French food. Certain English food, like your proper fish and chips.
That
Do you know what fish and chips is?
Fries.
Yeah, there you go. It's fried fish and French fries.
Yeah.
But when done right, delicious and good.
Mm-hmm.
German food. There's a couple German spots around town. Our favorite one closed. Super bummed about that. The Berliner underneath the bridge in Georgetown. Why'd you guys close? You were always slammed. Why'd you do that? Damn. Yeah, we got a couple other things. And we're adopting you. Congratulations. It is time to end the show with real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Alrighty then. Let's see. Oh, we have time. Not a ton of time, but we have some time. What a variety of clips that we have today. We have Drake May on the Topgolf visit. That is certainly the most interesting in terms of relevant content. And I'm not the biggest Jameis Winston fan for a million reasons. But when the clip is called Jameis Winston interviews the fish he caught, sometimes you just got to click.
Go, we got Justin right here, too. Look at Justin. Look at this. Look at this fish. Slap fish, slap away, swim away, fish. You're not going nowhere. We got you on the boat right now. What do you have to say for yourself? Oh, your cousin came. Your cousin came. Well, we have it, folks. We just cut the line. We have 2 family members of the tuna. If you were wondering, I asked the question, too. Why do fish flap when they're out the water? A wise friend told me that they're just simply trying to swim away. Well, fish, how does it work swimming in the air? They didn't really have a response. Sometimes no response is the best response at all.
I think that's something Jameis perhaps should have learned himself at some point along the way.
Something is wrong with him, man. I don't know what it is. He's crazy.
Yeah, there are at least a few, if not many, screws loose. There. Oh God, Anthony's dying. He just coughed on air. But not like on the radio air, because that would be fine. Anyway, our show's over. We'll see you tomorrow. Tarico at 4.